tropical day today. Not a lot of breeze, so it's a little bit sweaty. But we just did textiles class. So working more on the garments that we're embellishing. So today, what did I do? I deconstructed a shirt. So you're cutting off like the collar, the cuffs. I disconnected and opened up the sleeves. It's kind of just like a... Actually, I had to cut off a piece of this and burn it so I could see what textile it's made out of, because it didn't have a tag on it because it's from a like a tailor. And I think it's like a rayon cotton blend, because it was kind of cottony, but it also kind of smelled a bit like burning hair. So I think it's a rayon cotton blend, and it's very soft. So, and that would be the rayon part of things. But I disconnected the sleeves. I opened them up because I need to, one, dye them, or stain them rather, because I'm going to be using oil to stain these things, like bike chain oil and stuff, and old car part oil. And then I also need them flat because I want to 3D print some armory pieces on it. So a new thing that I've been learning is 3D printing onto textiles. Which, you know, you can 3D print stuff and then you can glue it onto fabric, but I'm interested in embedding it in the fabric. So I see if I've got an example, but the idea is you will print a couple layers and then you will pin or clamp the fabric to the print bed and then keep printing, and depending on what material your like textile is made out of, it might either melt in place or fuse through the pores of the fabric, and then you've got 3D print stuff, like, you know, embedded. I don't remember if I talked about this in another video or not. Anyway, here's some 3D print textiles. So this was like a test on tulle. I have another one tested on organza, so I wanted to see if it would fuse through the pores or melt the actual textile itself. So it's a little bit stiffer, but I haven't tried it on natural fabric, so on cotton yet. And then also spend the rest of the class deconstructing like a sample book for a curtain manufacturer. So it's like a bunch of like gauzy curtain swatches. I don't know if I have a piece here, like this kind of. So deconstructing the sample books, which is a book of like squares of like, these are all the different patterns we have for our curtains. You can choose what curtain you want. Disassembling it and then peeling off all of the labels and the tape and cleaning them up and stuff so I can do my patchwork hood piece for the garment. And I realized today as well that I might not end up doing it even as much as I want to, because I think it's a signature element of the design. Because it's not technically embellishing, I'm doing an embellishment technique, so barrow, patchwork, and top stitching, but it's constructing it from a base material, so it's more like upcycling. So I might focus more on the rusting and dyeing and the other bits that I'm doing, and then if I have time I will complete this element, but it's not technically ticking the box for the design. So yeah, but I didn't work on the garments over the last week because it was super busy with Supernova and everything. So I'm a little bit behind, so I'm just gonna have to smash some stuff out at home, but I have like a plan written out of all the steps that I need to do. And it's designed in such a way that, like, because it's all piecemeal parts, if I miss one, then I can still submit the rest of it, because it's like I'm still ticking the boxes. Like if I can't finish the hood, then I still have the shirt and the pants and the belt and all that other stuff. So just I'll focus on one piece at a time, so I at least have a wearable garment. This is this week's ugly cat art. We're working in Photoshop again, so making patterns. So we basically got 5 different pictures of babushka dolls, and we're meant to like mess with them using the Photoshop tools, like changing the hue, saturation, using the layer effects and things to create this little repeatable square, and then create a pattern out of it. Mine didn't quite repeat properly. I think I did my maths incorrectly on that. But when you make an image or you put an image in Photoshop, you can select it and turn it into a pattern, and then the pattern you can use to fill things. You can use as like a brush tool. That's the how to do it up there. So we did that, and we also finished the inspiration board, which is very ugly. Yeah, I even used 3D font. Woo! It looks like the newer Photoshops have 3D functions in them. I don't know when that was added because I have Photoshop CS2, which was for like Windows 7, so yeah, we're old. I just made this little bonus pattern, little frogs. But yeah, that was CAD class today, just doing some Photoshop. And yeah, we'll see what we do next week on that. Hello, we're now finally on our last bit of the fashion history unit. So we're now looking at the 21st century. Obviously we're only like 2 decades into the 21st century, so we're not going to do it in the same format as the previous decades, especially because fashion is so wide and deep now in how many people are involved in it, and its variation and diversity. Like the globalization of it is absolutely batshit. We're just going to look at a little piece. So again, we're going to look at an influential effect. I ended up choosing quite a broad one because there were too many different influential things I wanted to talk about. So I ended up just doing like an umbrella term and talked a little bit about technologies. So this covers quite a few things. So each of these aspects, globalization, sustainability, and advancements, they're all separate things. But I kind of wanted to touch on briefly on all of them. Oh my, I just realized I misspelled globalization here. There we go. Oh, now it doesn't fit. No. Anyway, we're submitting this later. This is the last thing for this assignment, and then we're good. So yes, obviously, technological advancements speeding up almost exponentially. It's kind of plateauing. Depends on what you define as technological advancements, though. So lots of changes in the 21st century, and it definitely particularly changes ways in which we consume fashion and how fashion is communicated. Supply chains and things, and also counter to that, how we talked about fast fashion. There's now, with that transparency, a demand from consumers for, they want to know what's going on more in fashion. They want to be more personally invested and involved. So if we look at some advancements, we can talk about the emergence of digital printing, whole garment construction. So like knitting machines can knit an entire sweater in one go rather than just doing just like sheets of fabric. You can print the entire thing. Also digital printing onto fabrics, and different, if you compare different ways that we print art on shirts, lino printing or heat press or image transfer, sublimation is a big technique as well. So lots of different ways for that. There's also innovations in fashion technology. So the biggest one that usually gets brought up is laser cutting and 3D printing, and I am particularly interested in these things because I feel like they're poorly reported on, because they only ever get reported on when some big name designer does them. But it's been used by hobbyists for so long, both laser cutting and 3D printing, and particularly costume designers. Bruh. Anyway, we now have techwear, and by techwear I don't mean the genre of style, I mean like putting heart monitors embedded into shirts, or cuffs of workout wear that communicates with your phone via app, that kind of stuff. Even design software and software using the behind the scenes sort of processes has improved and changed a lot as well. How big companies operate and use all their software is all very different in the 21st century. Counter to this, or alongside, sustainability and technology are not intrinsically at odds. In fact, you need technological advancements to improve sustainability. And because the fashion industry is literally one of the world's biggest global pollutants, I think it was more than mining in Australia at one point.
We have a much more globalized exposure to the entire fashion process and the supply chain, and consumers literally demand transparency there. And they, as they know more about it and the conscientiousness increases, the moral values from the spec tep influences change, then, ethics demands research into sustainable technologies and circular production. As I mentioned before, fashion is super global. We are well and truly into the internet age, and some people say the internet plus age. And global brands emerge with global reach. E-commerce is absolutely massive, and if not, a necessity for fashion to succeed. If you are not online, you are not in fashion. Basically, it's kind of how it goes. But yes, we basically have the technology to get an instant idea of what fashion is like at any point in time, at any place in the world, and all of their different influences that affect them wherever they are. There's also much more consumer engagement. I use the words here, fashion is democratized. So essentially consumers have a lot of power here through social networking because, you curate your content, and it's always a race to get in on the experience that users are having, basically. Digital spaces are emerging, and we even see the traditional fashion shows be live streamed, which I'm really surprised that's a new thing. Like just having that all be digitized, it's like, get with it, guys. Obviously, designers' roles have changed over history as well. If we think about how designers in the early 20th century, how they dictated fashion, and what roles they had, vary by house to house, but there was, it's the standard expectations of the job. We now have, I need to move over a little bit, some slightly different expectations here for the designers and haute couture in the 20th century. It's more, I want to say, ground up, because designers now have to cater to consumers, not just dictate what they wear. It's kind of a bit of a 180 on the early 20th century, where designers were the ones who decided what people get to buy, but kind of consumers dictate it now. It's a consumer market. With ready-to-wear emerging in the 1950s, so ready-to-wear as opposed to haute couture fashion show content. Ready-to-wear is more, off the rack, as it were. That increases accessibility to fashion, sizes standardizes, wearability, and that changes how designers approach these markets. So the market's a lot more diffused, and often designers are going to need to be able to create for both. If you think about how massive fashion houses like Gucci have like their higher end and then their couture items, as well as, you can get cheaper Gucci socks or something like that, like something more consumer grade, this diffused market. Some other changes we see here, we talk about fast fashion. We are actually seeing fast fashion slow down in a way, and I say in a way because it's still going at breakneck pace, but the way it is done is a little bit different now. With new resources, new production methods throughout the 20th century, we're able to ramp up our processes, shortening the production time to well over a year. To, we can have design to prototype to shop floor within days nowadays. Technological innovations have allowed this. But because consumer conscientiousness has increased, the demand for slower fashion has increased as well, and technology is innovating in that regard. We want smaller batch processes. We want less waste. So we're doing technology advancements to reduce waste in garment design, and we want to emphasize the use of repair, upcycling, and preservation of garments as well. So that we're seeing that shift back to those values. Another big thing that changed over the 20th century, and I pointed out previously, is how the youth market emerged. I mentioned that primarily in the 50s and 60s, youth culture. Before that, it was kind of just like one big market. And if you weren't in that market, you weren't in fashion. Now we have tons of markets, not just the mature and youth market. All of these markets are super subdivided as well. So that's a big thing that's changed there. We've got to design for more people, more diversity, which is, it's what we want. Also, the way designers' influence is different as well. I just move over here again. Shifty. Designers now have more tools to work with in the 21st century, and because of this, they also have more responsibility. You're a part of a cog in a big machine, basically. There's a lot of pressure there to succeed in a super saturated and competitive market because so many people are in fashion now. which is it can be a little bit stressful. But yeah, we now have so many more resources to work with, and because time goes on, we now have more historical references to work with as well, more precedents for reworking and bringing out historical silhouettes, influences, and themes. It's interesting. There's a bit of a demand now for more bespoke and custom slow fashion, as I mentioned before. Because people are putting their money into what matters to them. There's consumer power, consumer dictated market. Another thing I wanted to talk about, or we have to talk about, because it's the assignment, is some emerging practices. So I found these ones a little hard to choose because there's so many different things, but I picked a pretty lowball, easy one to talk about here. So political messaging in fashion is not new by any stretch of the imagination. Some fashion designers, just by existing, are creating a political message. But I just wanted to touch on how political messaging is quite common in 21st century design practices at all levels of fashion, couture, to ready-to-wear, to everything there. And this is just an example here. These are 3 of the many politically motivated gowns for the Met Gala. Sometimes they're a little bit on the nose. If you have like a whole political message tattooed across your ass, it can be a little bit tacky, but you're obviously getting your message across. Whereas we have over here, much more subtle look. This is a design influence by Marsha P. Johnson, very important queer rights advocate. I will put a video describing her work and how important she is in the description. And this stresses a much more subtle way of having your political messaging. Like this has one of Marsha's quintessential quotes on it: "Pay no mind. The color scheming and headdress are inspired by something that Marsha wore." And we have our trans advocate here as well wearing the gown. So there's some layers here, and I think it's quite lovely. Representation is very important, and there's markets for it. It can seem a little bit, tacky, I guess, when a corporation is catering directly to our political values, and I guess it depends on who is catering. If we want to wear a shirt that speaks about Black power, we want it to be a Black owned business that's selling us that shirt. So we have the conscientiousness and the buying power and the research power to see who is selling us our values. And the other one I touched on, my teacher thought this one was a bit weird, but it's kind of important to me. I wanted to talk about virtual commerce and how virtual interaction in digital spaces is, this is an emerging space for fashion. I am loath to use the phrase metaverse, as I have a lot of thoughts on the metaverse, but essentially this is the space. So there's labels where if you buy the physical garment, you can have a digital version where you can wear that in digital spaces on your avatar or in virtual reality, little accessories you can wear in virtual reality. Or we have as well, related to cryptocurrencies and non-fungible tokens, the idea of selling unique fashion art where if you want to wear this, you send a photo to who you bought it from and they will render it onto your body. So because so much fashion is consumed primarily through online, you don't see people in real life wearing what you interact with on Instagram. So this is a sensible move in that direction, as I also have some thoughts on cryptocurrencies as well, but we won't get into that. But yeah, these are some things to think about as we're moving forward into the 21st century. There's obviously a lot more I could cover, but we're getting started. So yeah, that's your last design history. Now you don't have to deal with me. Yay! This pile of fabric is a shirt I've basically finished. It's just too hard to show when it's like this. I'll try it on in a sec. The only thing I have left to do on it is, so I've hand sewn all these buttons. They're not the buttons I wanted. I bought really cute, like sort of glittery, transparent ones. But they were too small, and apparently you have to have 2cm buttons. So I dug around in the sewing room and found 5 slightly different shades of blue buttons. So they kind of don't really match. And the only thing I have left to do, bearing in mind that this facing on the inside stays, because I hate ironing that stuff, it keeps peeling off, is these buttonholes. But apparently there's a fancy buttonhole machine at school I have not seen, and the teacher's going to do it. But otherwise, this shirt's done. The other thing I did was these tucks and pleats. These are the nicest pleats I have ever diddly dang done. They are so straight and perfectly mathed out. The last time I did pleats on a skirt, it was the same skirt that I sewed the zip to the outside of it and had to hide it behind the jacket. And the maths was bad, and none of the pleats lined up, and they didn't press all the way down the fabric. But these are fresh. Some little pin tucks, some 6mm tucks that I then went over the top of and smushed them all this way, then smushed them all that way, then kind of alternated it a little bit to make some funky patterns. But yeah, productive day in sewing, way better than last week where I was very depressed with constantly having to unpick and redo my shirt stuff. But I think my sewing is improving. The only thing left for me to do now is go through my workbook and pull out the ones that the teacher gave me feedback for, and fix them. Then we only have like 1 or 2 more samples until the end of the semester. It's happening! Very quick update, because there isn't a lot to talk about in pattern making class today other than I did an exam and finished that exam at 2:30, so 9 to 2:30 I think that's pretty good. But essentially we got given a design and had to do up a plan, analyze the elements of the design, plan how we're going to pattern it out, then pattern it out, do up a sheet of all the pattern pieces, do a fabric analysis for what would be suitable for it, put it all together, and then have it graded. So the design I got was a short puff sleeve gathered blouse, which is like a button-up blouse, with a forward shoulder yoke on the back. So all those elements are things that we've done before, just not all together in the same design. So basically just look through my book on what I've done previously and put all those elements together to plan out how I was going to do this one. I took my time, especially on the plan, because I didn't want to like mess anything up because I didn't preemptively do something. But when my teacher looked at it, she said it was beautiful. She said beautiful patterns, perfect. I fucked up one thing, which is I accidentally cut off the seam allowance on a shoulder seam. So I had to tack on a little bit of extra paper because I cut it on the wrong side of the line, basically. So that was an easy fix. And apparently I was the only person to do the gathering points on the top of the sleeve correctly. So, woo! Grand success in pattern making. Yeah, Friday, nothing else to report, just the end of another week. And only a couple more weeks to go. So, yeah. Let's see here. I don't think I have any other updates. I'll probably think of something and might tag it on the end of the video.